Hello, I'm Kurt Lidke, board chair for Klamath Film, and you just watched Bride and Zoom, a hilarious romantic comedy about a looming wedding with a very distinctly pandemic twist. With us is the film's director and writer and previous Klamath Independent Film Festival Awards judge, A.R. Nicholas. A.R., thank you so much for being a part of the Klamath Independent Film Festival, this time as a submitting director, not as a judge.
I'm shocked. No, I'm really excited to be part of it.
Well, first of all, I just need to say how much I absolutely loved the writing in this film. Each character is so well thought out with their various issues and subtleties, and the dialogue is incredibly witty and very, fast-paced and snappy. How long did this take to write and inevitably rewrite? Because with how well written the dialogue is, I'm certain this went through quite a few drafts.
Yes, but it went faster than the one I'm working on now, put it that way. I think it was about a year really from start to finish. I was specifically trying to use the medium of Zoom in a way that would serve the material um, during COVID when it was not safe to really be making movies live. It was hard. And as far as the rewriting process, it just kept getting pared down. I think the original script was perhaps 20 pages longer than the one we shot. And then it was an interesting process to make it. I don't want to get ahead of you with the questions, but um, they say about there are three times you make a movie, and this movie really was made in the edit. Should I keep going?
Well, I mean, the interactions between everyone are very fast and very well timed, and to me, it reminds me a lot of Aaron Sorkin style productions, where the characters, there's the old adage in filmmaking of if you can show it instead of say it, show it, don't have someone give a whole dialogue. But in this setting of making a film within Zoom, these characters, without feeling like it's exposition, are able to throw out so much in dialogue, and it's all back and forth. And I loved the way that each character was written out. It felt like this was a script where you really went into great detail. I don't know how much of it was improvised, but it looked like, at least from the viewer's perspective, that there was a lot of time spent in really hashing out the characters and getting dialogue down right because of how quick and witty things were going back and forth.
Well, thank you, Kurt. That's really kind. Um, the the process of making this, though, I just have to say, I shot everybody individually. There was just one person on the Zoom call, and I read every part that that actor had to read against. I had this rhythm in my head of how everyone was to sound, and we didn't even do a table read. Um, I just had this musical sound in my head of the speed I wanted it to go, and so every actor was a good actor who was in the movie, and they were able to either match my rhythm or take my rhythm and turn it into something else as I was giving it to them. And so when we went to edit it, you can imagine they the actors were acting against that green light in Zoom. There was no person they were looking at because we were capturing one actor at a time. And so they were only hearing me read those other lines. And we had to just hope, the editor and I, the technical producer, we had to hope that the timing was going to work out right. And that's why you sometimes see two shots, two boxes. Um, I wanted like a whole thing to happen with four boxes where it was batting around in each box, but the timing didn't work quite right. So I'd have to go from single to single. And that's what I mean about making it in the edit. It was forced upon me in some situations, and in other situations the timing worked out miraculously well. And yeah, it was so fun to do. We all had a blast doing this, I have to say.
Well, the timing of it, it's very fast paced. As a feature film, it barely clocks in at just over an hour, but there's a lot of story that comes out within that 1 hour time frame. So, what I appreciate about this is that it doesn't feel like there's any wasted time. Every moment there is something taking place or something being said where you get to know these characters a little bit more. And of course, comedy is all about timing, but this feels like there's no slowdown. It's sort of breakneck from the opening scene until the very end, just a constant hang on for dear life perspective, which for anyone who's, I guess, has gone through this experience of, right before a wedding and all the added complications of the pandemic, certainly days felt like that sometimes.
Yeah, and having worked in soap operas as an actor years ago, some of those characters were, Erica. The Erica character was sort of based on Erica Kane, the Susan Lucci character, the Susan Lucci role that she played for years, and so that was the part that I thought I really had to have a strong actress in there, and I was so lucky to get Rachel. The cast is half LA and half Portland, um, and they didn't even meet. That's what's just it was astounding because they were good actors. It's so important to have good
Yeah.
actors.
Aside from all of us being, stuck at home during the COVID-19 pandemic and no one knew how long it was going to last, and we're just trying to figure out kind of what to do with what may be 2 weeks, 2 months, how naive we were, right? Um,
Right.
what inspired making a romantic comedy produced entirely around video chats? Like, at what point had you been on so many Zoom calls where you're like, I need to make something out of this?
Yeah, I wanted to I wanted to make something that was makeable in the time, and it's was remote. It was safe, and I used all. Well, some of the actors aren't SAG, but it was the Screen Actors Guild micro budget contract that I used, and so you're required to keep actors safe. So there were two scenes that were shot at my house with two actors who together who were okay with the safety and the COVID protocols and all that kind of stuff. And so that was the only scene that required danger, that was dangerous. Uh, but that's why it was inspirational, and also there was just so much gloom and doom. I wanted to make something that was happy, that ended happily, that was about love, that was about overcoming obstacles. And I had never tried to write a romantic comedy before, but I love to watch them. And I've seen so many of them, and I watched even more in preparation to make this, that it just seemed like the right fit. And because people were getting married via Zoom, it was, that to me is crazy, but friends of friends' children got married on Zoom and always said they would have another wedding. So it wasn't, it wasn't odd. The idea wasn't odd to me to say, okay, if people getting married by Zoom, why not make a movie of people getting married by Zoom?
I got hired out a lot during the pandemic for live streaming of events, and I was actually hired to live stream a wedding where there was, including me, I think 8 people present and about 200 watching online via Zoom. So yes, this did hit a little close to real life. It hit a little close to home for me because I was like, I've kind of been there, done that with this.
Yeah. 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 So I'm glad you thought that it wasn't too outlandish.
Well, there's a lot of things that I enjoyed about this film, but there's a subtle touch to this that I really liked in terms of the cinematography of it, with the exception of the climactic, not Michael Bublé scene. Every actor's sequence seems to be intentionally low grade in a certain way. Like, at first I was wondering why you'd use low grade cameras for a feature film, until a few minutes it kind of clicked that if everyone's talking to each other on phones and laptops, that's how it would look. Like, even sometimes there's green screens where actors start to pixelate a little bit, and that's exactly what would happen with someone during the pandemic trying to figure out how to use green screen live on Zoom if they're not professional filmmakers like us. So
Yeah.
please tell me all of that was totally intentional in the filming.
Well, it was totally intentional, but it was more than that. It was just what you get when you capture in Zoom. We did not use any DSLRs. We captured via Zoom, and the reason the quality is as good as it is, that it's not worse, is that we captured singles full frame. And so that we could edit. Had we just done it, where everybody was visible at once, we made the boxes ourselves. We didn't ever shoot anything with everybody in the boxes because the quality would have been that much worse. So it was a way to make a movie inexpensively because we did not have any DSLR kits, lighting kits we needed to send out to people. I had, you got, and I learned this because I was in a web series over COVID. And so I was, I knew what I needed to get to make my image look good so that I could then tell the actors what they needed to have, what was the minimal um, uh, equipment that they needed at home, whether it's a ring light, some other standing lights that they could make their image a little bit better. No one had a green screen at their home. Only I have a green screen. So that's why those two sets of actors came here to do those two shots. But yeah, we did do some on an iPhone. You saw that in the beginning with Ricky, and the phone is on the phone inside the video, inside the, yeah, that was fun to contemplate. How do we get the phone, within the image, how many times back? I wanted to do more of that, but
I like that because 2019, all of this wouldn't have been believable, but then 2020, 2021, I can't, none of us can even begin to count how many Zoom calls collectively we've been a part of where someone didn't realize how to unmute themselves, or because now it's 6 months in, they've bought a green screen because now they want to do cool backgrounds, but they don't know how to actually use it.
right,
Like it brings a certain level of believability where 2, 3 years ago, and you saw this film, it wouldn't make any sense. But
right,
now it's a sign of the times where we've kind of been there, done that. At a certain point, I'm not sure if it's Zoom fatigue now. Everyone's like, oh no, not another film about this. But your film takes a comedic slant on it, where it's not just like, oh yeah, we're dealing with this yet again, and this is Zoom call number 500. Let's have some, confetti fly or something for how many
right,
times you had to go through this.
right, exactly. Well, thank you for that. I'm glad it struck a nerve. I'm glad it, connected with you.
Yeah. What challenges came with directing? Because obviously this is a very different approach from a traditional film set and traditional, directing experience.
Yes, I think I called myself more like director producer. There so much of it was production, and as I said, I read every time we recorded someone. I'd have my technical creative producer. She was doing the live capture. She was the one listening to the actors to make sure that the sound was clean enough. And I was the one reading and watching the performances. It was hard to read and watch the performances at the same time, but I had Michelle to help me with that as well. And so directorially, I was in it every moment. I had to be the person who everybody was responding to and listening to as I was saying the every other actor's lines, and I don't think directors do that as a general rule. They're not the ones reading the opposite parts. But that was, like I said, the only way we were going to get the timing reasonably correct is if it was me doing it in the rhythm that I heard in my head. So in this, I mean, it was a real, from its inception, writer, director, I had a vision for it. I did talk to a couple directors about doing it, but then I realized that they didn't get it like I got it. And it would have meant them being frustrated, me possibly being frustrated with them. It just seemed easier to do it myself. That's my dog groaning. But it was really fun. I mean, if directing is always like that, wow, how fun. How fun.
It seems like in just watching it, even though characters, to me, it's almost like we're in a weird way, almost like watching a B movie horror slasher film where it's supposed to be big and scary, but you can see like as they're running away from the slasher, they've got just like a giant smile because like this is so cool, this is so fun. Like it just seems like the actors are having a blast doing this. And maybe it's just because in the midst of the pandemic, they're like, we're actually getting to work right now, and we haven't been trying to. We've been having issues with that, but the
Yeah.
characters just really make it for me in this film. In particular, the grandma character got a lot of kudos from our judges, and in writing and directing these characters. You said that, you really enjoy these actors. Did you give them a lot of leniency to develop their characters on their own? Was any of it improvised, or did you really kind of hash out to them, here's what's going on, here's the way that you need to convey them?
Well, there I probably knew half of the actors before we began shooting. The grandmother, Jenny O'Hara, I did know. I'd worked with her before. She's actually directed a play I wrote. I knew I could count on her. Um, I sent the script out in close to final form to everybody. They all said, yes, yes, yes. I said, micro budget. This is what I'm paying. They said, yes, yes, yes. Especially, I don't have to leave my house. Why wouldn't I do this? It's like, and the other thing was, I said, we'll have one rehearsal. We'll make sure all your technical stuff works, and then I will record your part. We will do, and so each actor only worked an hour, maybe an hour and a half, to capture their performance. I had to go back to 5 of them with some audio issues, but I didn't have to do reshoots on anybody. I allowed anyone who had an idea to bring it. Best idea wins. If you've got another way you want to say it, this is what we're trying to impart here, information wise. Got a better way to say it? Try it. You know, even with only shooting everybody for an hour and a half, all the way through the script, there was enough time to play around with stuff. Another thing that was tricky, but also a boon as far as getting to shooting it on Zoom, and you may remember this, is that you see your green light, which is what's recording you. That's your camera. But underneath that camera, you can be scrolling the script as you're working. So nobody had trouble with the lines. There was a couple people had big speeches and they wanted to do it again, but we could pick it up because I knew we could cut to somebody. Am I getting way too in the weeds?
No, no, this is fine. And you talked about how this is a different experience from a directing standpoint, but I'm sure also from the acting standpoint, there's a very different way to make a film than I'm sure most, if not all, of the cast was used to. So even though you
Right.
were only with them for a short time, um, I'm sure there was a unique, interesting experience for them, and inevitably, I'm sure there were probably a couple of really great bloopers or behind the scenes stuff going on, even though you weren't actually in the same room. That any funny moments come to mind for you?
I'm sorry, I missed that question.
Um, from the acting perspective, it's a very different approach, as much as it was from a directing standpoint. And even though you were only working with the director, or you were only working with actors for a short time frame, um, I'm sure inevitably, because this approach was so different for them, any bloopers or things really stand out from the course of production that now you can look back and laugh about?
Um, I don't know who's going to be watching, but the item that the grandmother holds,
Right.
um, she was having quite a bit of fun with that, and she was like waving it around all the time, and I'm like, Jenny, keep it together. Um, so there was a lot that was funny around that. Um, One thing that I can say about all of them is they, at that point when we were shooting, most of them had had experience with Zoom plays. Did you attend any Zoom plays during COVID? So they all knew about the green light and the scrolling script. What I couldn't get them to do was be like all like this, like they were having trouble. I wanted them to act like they were having more trouble than they actually were and be bigger than they wanted to be. So those were the two things that I would say I had to remind them about. It's not that they didn't want to do it. It's just that they had learned during the play reading to kind of keep their image just sort of in a static position,
Hmm.
right? And if you're on the FaceTime with your friends or whatever, you're moving around and like, hold on, I gotta go do this. And you're carrying your image with you, and the person watching is like, where are you going now?
Right, right.
Like, what's that in the corner? And so that I wanted to feel like everybody was in the same movie, you know.
Okay,
And
great.
that was I think we did that. I think everybody is in the same world in the movie.
You have the not Michael Bublé character that pops in at the very very end of the film. Who is that, and how did you make that connection to get a full band involved in a film that otherwise comes across as intentionally minimalistic?
you you can't even believe this. This guy, Jamie Flanagan, is a Michael Bublé impersonator in Great
Okay,
Britain.
okay,
I was Googling Michael Bublé impersonators. I even wrote to Michael Bublé, the real Michael Bublé's agent, Silence. Um, and so I wrote to a few guys. There was a guy in Florida. He didn't look anything like Michael Bublé. And he was a little scary, actually. uh, and he really wanted to do it. And then Jamie contacted me from Great Britain. I'm trying to remember exactly where. He's outside London. And he says, Anna, you're not going to believe it, but I'm doing Irish or something.
yeah,
I'm about to go do a new bunch of promotional videos. So I'm going to have a live band in this club. And I said, oh my gosh, can we shoot your section in this
right.
club? And he's not an actor. I was trying to direct him via his stage manager who was on the phone. All right, ask him to back up a little bit and do it again. And then we go, Jamie, back up. And so that's how that came about. And yeah, and he sang the song. I wrote to Universal Music Group about the rights to that song, and then an entertainment lawyer gave me some advice about that song and what the credit that's there. And Jamie's like, I know that song, I'll sing it, and there you go.
It makes for an interesting contrast because you have all these people in these very confined spaces and Zoom windows, and all of a sudden here's like this full big, big band backing on this whole live stage. Um, it's like coming out of your shell a little bit, and the subtext of that kind of like being able to explore again, getting some elbow room. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
so has this been shown at other film festivals yet? And if so, what has the response been to Bride and Zoom?
It has not been shown at any festivals. It has won awards at festivals that I was never invited to attend. They were all either just virtual festivals or they were, I don't know what, some closed room, people deciding. But it may or may not screen at that festival down in California, or they may just give me the award. I'm not sure what they're doing, but so yeah, this will be its first live screening, unless the California thing decided
Right.
because they only have one day to screen stuff
Mhm.
apparently at their venue. So I don't know how they're figuring it out, but it's their first
Okay.
year. We will
So
be patient with them.
maybe we'll have the world premiere, maybe not, as far as an in theater.
In theater, exactly, and it was made to benefit Vow for Girls. I don't know if you know that. Vow is an organization that's trying to end child marriage worldwide. So we partnered with Vow, and Vow is a really cool group, actually. A lot of brides, instead of receiving gifts that they don't want, they say just give a donation to Vow. And so anyway, that's kind of what we did, and that's so it's been people have seen it based on their donations to Vow, I guess.
Okay, great. So what do you hope that people come away with from watching Bride and Zoom?
Perhaps that they should have considered having a Zoom wedding. That it really could be fun. I want them to think about sperm donation and tracking down your parents via ancestry.com, what you might actually find out. Just have a good time. Have a good time. The people are, I think, engaging, the characters. And like I said, I can't say enough great things about the actors. They just brought it and listened to me and trusted me. Um, and anyway, I hope a couple of them come down. They're talking about it.
Well, thank you, A.R. Nicholas, for this wonderful film and for joining us today. Brian and Zoom will be screened on Saturday, September 17th at 5:45 p.m. in our Northern Features category and available on demand through the end of September for the 10th Annual Klamath Independent Film Festival.